Excuse me. Can you step aside so I can get in my car and go home, please?
Not happening. Cops are on the way.
You're not getting in this car. You're out here trying to steal other people's stuff, and you're going to jail.
I own this car. You two are making a big mistake.
Yeah? We'll see what the police
Better
think.
start explaining yourself before they get here.
I don't...
What you just witnessed was more than a simple parking argument. It was an act of harsh, unprovoked hostility toward a man during one of the hardest times in his life. You saw the clash, heard the accusations, and watched as two strangers blocked a grieving man from entering his own car. Now we're going to share the full heartbreaking story behind this footage and the serious consequences this couple faced once the truth came out. If you feel this unfairness deserves attention, hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments on how that clip made you feel. Let's go back to the start of that chilly November afternoon in Columbus, Ohio. The elevator doors opened onto level 3A of the underground parking garage at Riverside Methodist Hospital, and Marcus Bell stepped out into the cold, impersonal air. The garage was a functional concrete space, all gray columns and harsh fluorescent lights that shone unforgivingly over rows of parked cars. The steady hum of ventilation filled the air, broken now and then by the distant roar of a car starting or the echo of footsteps on the concrete floor. It was dull and cold, the kind of place built for utility rather than comfort, where people moved through without noticing their surroundings, focused only on reaching their destination. But Marcus Bell felt every inch of it. He had been parking in this garage daily for the past 3 weeks, walking from his car to the elevator, riding up to the 5th floor, then navigating the sterile hospital corridors to room 512, where his older brother lay dying. Marcus was 32, an elementary school music teacher who spent his days helping children find joy in rhythm and song. He was naturally patient, gentle, and compassionate, the kind of person who noticed when a student was down and could bring a smile with a silly tune or a few kind words. But none of that mattered now. No patience or kindness could change what was happening in room 512. His brother David Bell was 40, a surgeon, brilliant, successful, and admired. David had encouraged Marcus to follow music teaching, insisting that true success wasn't measured by money but by the lives you touched. David had been his hero, protector, and closest friend. Now David was unresponsive, his body consumed by cancer that had advanced too quickly for even modern medicine to halt. Earlier that afternoon, the doctors had told Marcus it was only a matter of hours, maybe a day at most. David's breathing was shallow and strained. He couldn't speak and probably couldn't hear. Still, Marcus sat by his side, holding his hand, sharing memories they had made, and thanking him for everything he had been and everything he had given, including the car. Marcus' eyes were rimmed with red as he walked through the garage, his shoulders weighed down by a grief so deep it felt physical, pressing on his chest with every step and every breath. He wore a plain gray hoodie over a t-shirt and jeans, clothes he had thrown on that morning in the dim light, not caring about appearances because nothing mattered when your brother was dying. His hands were buried in his pockets as he shuffled forward, moving with the heavy, tired gait of someone drained in every way, body, mind, and spirit. He arrived at spot 3A, where the black Mercedes-Benz sedan gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. It was a stunning car, a symbol of David's accomplishments, the kind of vehicle a successful surgeon could own. 3 weeks ago, when David was first admitted and the doctors had delivered the heartbreaking news that there was nothing more they could do, David had made a choice. He signed the title over to Marcus not as a posthumous gift, but as a present given while he was still alive so he could see his younger brother receive it. Marcus remembered that day clearly. David had been weak, yet still aware, still able to offer a small smile. He called Marcus to the hospital, handed him an envelope with the signed title and keys and said, "I want you to have it now. I want to know you're driving it, that you're safe, and that when I'm gone you'll think of me every time you get behind the wheel." Marcus had tried to refuse, saying it was too much, but David insisted with the same firm determination that had made him an excellent surgeon. "Take it, Marcus. Please let me give this to you." And Marcus had accepted it, driven it home that night with tears streaming down his face, parked it carefully in his garage, and returned it to the hospital the next day and every day since. Now, as he reached the Mercedes in spot 3A, all he wanted was to get inside, drive home, and be alone with his grief. He longed to sit in his apartment in silence and come to terms with the fact that by tomorrow his brother would be gone. But as Marcus grasped the driver's side door handle, he heard rapid footsteps behind him. He turned to see two white individuals, a man and a woman in their 40s, walking toward him with purpose and hostility clear on their faces. Todd and Brenda Gustafson had been visiting Brenda's mother on the 4th floor. Their visit had been brief and tense, filled with passive-aggressive remarks about not visiting enough and complaints about the hospital food. They left annoyed, eager to leave, walking down to the garage in silence, each lost in their own irritation. Then Brenda noticed him, a young black man in a hoodie walking toward an expensive Mercedes. She nudged Todd, gestured silently, and without a word they both jumped to the same ugly conclusion. Car thief, criminal, someone who didn't belong touching a car like that. Their prejudice, their assumptions, their deep-rooted belief that a black man in a hoodie near a luxury car must be up to no good all snapped into action, turning their bad mood into self-righteous anger. "We should do something," Brenda whispered urgently. Call the police, Todd replied, already pulling out his phone. They walked quickly toward the Mercedes, determined to stop what they were convinced was a crime, never once questioning that they might be wrong, that their assumptions might come from bias and hatred alone. Marcus saw them coming and his heart sank. He had spent 32 years as a black man in America. He knew this scene. He recognized the look in their eyes, the forceful pace, the certainty in their own judgment. They assumed he was stealing the car. They were going to confront him. And on this day, when he was already emotionally shattered and barely holding himself together, he was going to have to defend his right to his own vehicle. Todd reached the Mercedes first, standing directly in front of the driver's door, his large body blocking access. Brenda stood beside him, arms crossed, her face a mix of fear and triumph. They thought they had caught him. They thought they were heroes, that's what they believed. Marcus reached into his pocket, not for keys but for his phone. He had learned long ago that recording was survival. Having proof could mean the difference between being believed and being accused. With hands shaking slightly from grief, fatigue, and the unfairness of having to face this now, he pulled out his phone and began filming. The camera captured the two strangers blocking his way to the car. The harsh fluorescent lights of the garage cast deep shadows on their faces. The concrete walls made every sound echo, amplifying the tension in the air. Excuse me, can you step aside so I can get in my car and go home, please? Marcus' voice, caught on video, was tired and worn. There was no anger, no threat, just an exhaustion so deep it felt physical, and a simple request for basic human decency. He was asking to pass, to reach his own car, to return home and mourn in peace. Not happening. Cops are on the way. Brenda's reply was sharp and triumphant, her tone full of the satisfaction of someone convinced they had caught a criminal in the act. She stood tall, chin high, completely sure of her own righteousness. In her mind, she was protecting property, stopping a crime, fulfilling her duty. The idea that she could be wrong, that she might be harassing an innocent man because of his skin color, never entered her thoughts. You're not getting in this car. You're out here trying to steal someone else's property and you're going to jail. Todd's voice was louder now, sharper, carrying the unspoken threat of force. He was a big man and used his size intentionally, standing close to the door so Marcus would have to confront him to get in. His posture was aggressive, legs apart, arms hanging loosely but ready, signaling he was prepared for a fight. He saw himself as the protector, guarding against criminals, but the irony that he was the one harassing an innocent man was completely lost on him. I own this car, you two are making a huge mistake. Marcus' words were straightforward and true, yet under them lay a deep sorrow the phone couldn't fully capture, though the slight tremor in his voice gave it away. He wasn't angry, he didn't have the energy for anger. He was crushed that this was happening, that on the day his brother lay dying upstairs while his world was unraveling, these strangers chose to make his pain worse by accusing him of something he hadn't done. The weight of grief combined with the weight of racial bias was almost unbearable. Yeah, we'll see what the cops say. Brenda's response was smug, condescending. She didn't believe him at all. In her mind, people like him didn't own cars like this. Her prejudice was so firm that even his clear statement of ownership couldn't break through the wall she had built in her mind. Better start explaining yourself before they get here. Todd added his own threat, his tone carrying an unspoken ultimatum. He was giving Marcus a chance to confess to the crime they had invented in their minds. The idea that Marcus owed them an explanation, that they had any right to demand it, showed just how deeply they believed they could control him. I don't have to. Marcus' response wasn't defiance. It wasn't a challenge or an escalation. It was a quiet assertion of dignity and sheer exhaustion. He didn't need to explain himself to these strangers. He didn't have to justify being there or prove ownership to satisfy their racist assumptions. He had done nothing wrong. He was beside his own car in the hospital parking garage where his brother was dying, trying to go home, and these two had decided, based solely on his skin color, that he was a criminal. He was done arguing. He would wait for the police, show his documentation, and let the authorities handle this nightmare. All he wanted was to get home. The standoff lasted several more minutes. Marcus filmed the Gustafsons blocking his way, the cold garage air heavy around them. Other people passed by, visitors leaving the hospital, staff heading to shifts, but no one stepped in. They glanced briefly, made quick judgments, and moved on, unwilling to involve themselves in what seemed like a conflict between strangers. Finally, the sound of footsteps echoed through the garage as two Columbus Police Department officers arrived, moving toward the Mercedes with careful professionalism. They had been called about a possible car theft at the hospital parking garage and approached ready for anything. The Gustafsons immediately hurried to meet them, spilling out a frantic jumble of accusations and self-congratulation. That's him. He's trying to steal this Mercedes. We caught him just before he could get in. We called you as soon as we saw him. Brenda pointed at Marcus, her voice full of excitement, casting herself and Todd as heroes who had prevented a crime. She was so certain of her version of events that she didn't notice the officers' expressions or how they were taking in the full picture. A well-dressed black man holding a phone, two agitated white people, and a luxury car in a hospital garage. The senior officer, a man in his late 40s with gray at his temples and the tired look of someone who had seen far too many situations like this, approached Marcus. His partner stayed back, observing and taking notes. "Sir, can you put the phone down so we can talk?" The request was calm, not quite in order, leaving room for interpretation. Marcus complied, lowering his phone but keeping it recording, slipping it into his pocket with the camera still running and the audio still capturing everything. "We have a report of a vehicle theft in progress. Can I see your license and registration for this car?" The officer's tone was professional, neither accusatory nor warm, simply following protocol to investigate a reported crime. Marcus slowly reached into his back pocket, careful to make each movement visible as he had learned, and took out his driver's license. He handed it over, then moved to the passenger side, unlocked the car with the key fob in his pocket, a motion that made Todd Gustafson's eyes widen, and opened the glove box to retrieve the registration. The officer studied the license, matching the photo to Marcus' face and confirming his identity. Then the officer looked at the vehicle registration and his expression shifted slightly. "Sir, the name on this registration is Dr. David Bell. That's not your name." Behind Marcus, Todd Gustafson's face lit up with a smug, victorious smile. There it was, proof. The car wasn't registered to this man. They had been right. They had caught a car thief. Brenda grabbed Todd's arm, squeezing it in triumph. Both of them watched the scene with barely contained glee. Marcus felt something inside him snap. The fragile control he'd been clinging to began to crumble. His voice when he spoke was quiet, thick with emotion that had nothing to do with their accusation and everything to do with the name the officer had just said. "No, sir, Dr. Bell is my older brother. He's upstairs in hospice, room 512. He's not going to make it through the weekend. He signed the title over to me last week." "It's in the glove box." The words came slowly, each one a struggle, because saying them out loud made it real. David was dying. David was already as good as gone. And Marcus was standing in a parking garage, defending his right to the car his brother had given him as a final gift, the unfairness and cruelty almost unbearable. He reached into the glove box and pulled out the title. The transfer from David Bell to Marcus Bell was clear, dated only 8 days earlier, properly notarized. The officer took it, examined it carefully, and Marcus saw understanding begin to form on his face. "I just came from his room. He's not really responsive anymore. This was the last thing he sent me." Marcus took his phone back out, paused the recording, and opened his text messages. He scrolled through weeks of messages, questions about symptoms, doctor updates, reassurances, expressions of love, until he found the one from 3 weeks ago. It was a photo of the black Mercedes in this very parking garage, concrete pillars and fluorescent lights visible in the background. Beneath it was David's message from the day he gave Marcus the keys. "She's all yours now, Marcus. Drive safe. I love you." The officer looked at the phone screen, read the message, noted the date, and saw the photo. He glanced at the signed title in his hand, Marcus' driver's license, the registration, and then at Marcus' face, red-rimmed eyes, exhaustion, grief etched into every line. Suddenly, the full picture became clear. They were in a hospital parking garage. The car belonged to a doctor. That doctor was upstairs in hospice, dying. He had given the car to his younger brother. The younger brother had just come from what would likely be their final visit. And these two strangers had assumed, based solely on prejudice, that he was stealing. The air in the garage shifted, almost tangible. The officer's expression softened, moving from neutral professionalism to a mix of sympathy and anger. He gently returned Marcus' license, registration, and title, his hands careful as if handling something delicate. "Mr. Bell, I am so deeply sorry for what you are going through. Please accept our condolences." His voice was quiet, sincere, carrying the weight of someone who realized he had stepped into a profoundly private moment of grief. He stepped back, giving Marcus space, and then faced Todd and Brenda Gustafson. The smugness had vanished from their faces, replaced by dawning horror. They had heard the conversation, seen the text on the phone, and finally understood the gravity of what they had done. The officer's voice was ice when he spoke to them. "You two filed a false report and harassed a man in a hospital parking garage while his brother is dying upstairs. Do you have any idea how wrong that is?" The words hung in the cold air like a verdict. Brenda's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Todd's face had gone pale, his earlier aggression completely disappeared. They had been so certain, so sure of their assumptions. They had seen a black man near a nice car and made up a crime from thin air. In doing so, they had caused pain to someone at his darkest moment. "We thought we were just trying to help," Brenda stammered, but the excuse faltered and died. "You're being cited for filing a false police report," the officer said, opening his citation book. "Both of you deliberately called in a false emergency, wasted department resources, and harassed an innocent man. You're lucky he's not pressing charges for unlawful detention." As the officer wrote the citations, his partner recorded detailed notes for the incident report. The hospital location, the dying brother in room 512, the signed title, the heartbreaking text message, and the false accusations rooted in racial bias. The report would be thorough, a complete record of what happened and why. Marcus stood by his car, holding the documents proving his ownership, his innocence, his right to be there. He felt hollow, emptied. The Gustafsons were receiving citations. The police had apologized, the truth had been acknowledged, but none of it changed the fact that David was still dying upstairs. None of it gave Marcus the peace he had sought when he walked to his car, and none of it erased the violation of having his grief interrupted by racist assumptions. The officers finished with the Gustafsons and turned back to Marcus. You're free to go, Mr. Bell. Again, we're very sorry for your loss. If you need anything or if they bother you again, call us. Marcus nodded, unable to trust his own voice. He unlocked the car, climbed into the driver's seat and closed the door. The interior still carried his brother's scent, cologne, coffee and the leather polish David always used. He sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, the citations being issued outside his window, and finally let the tears flow. The video Marcus had recorded stayed on his phone, capturing everything. He hadn't intended to share it. It was filmed only to protect himself in the moment. But 2 days later, after David passed away in the early morning hours, when Marcus was drowning in grief, anger, and the injustice of it all, he made a choice. He sent the video to a local news station with a brief note. This happened in the hospital parking garage where my brother was dying. I just wanted to go home and mourn. Instead, I was accused of stealing the car he gave me as his last gift. The journalist who received it immediately recognized that this was more than another case of racial profiling. It was a story about the human cost of prejudice, how it ignores grief, dignity, and basic decency. The story aired 3 days later, the video playing on the evening news, Marcus' calm voice asking to reach his car, the Gustafsons' hostile refusal, and the heartbreaking reveal about his dying brother. The response was instant and overwhelming. The video went viral, shared thousands of times on social media, each share accompanied by outrage and sorrow. People weren't just shocked by the racial profiling, though that alone was terrible. They were moved by the context. A hospital garage, a dying brother, a final gift turned into public humiliation. Todd Gustafson worked as a regional manager at a retail company. By Monday morning, his employer had already received hundreds of calls, emails, and messages demanding his firing. The company, facing a public relations crisis and horrified by his actions, immediately suspended him pending investigation. Within a week, he was terminated for behavior that violated the company's ethics and values. Brenda Gustafson didn't have a public-facing job, but her social media profiles were found. Her accounts were flooded with messages, her photos shared with captions exposing her actions. Friends and acquaintances distanced themselves. Family members publicly condemned her behavior. She became an outcast in her own community, her face recognized from the video, her cruelty preserved online. The citations for filing a false police report brought fines and permanent records, but the social consequences were far harsher than any legal penalty. They had exposed themselves, revealed the ugly bias they carried, and done so at the worst possible moment, harassing a grieving man at a hospital. For Marcus Bell, the weeks after his brother's death blurred together with funeral arrangements, grief counseling, and the slow, painful adjustment to life without David. He took a leave from teaching, unable to face his students' cheerful faces while his own heart was broken. He drove the Mercedes carefully, thinking of David with every mile, remembering his brother's text, "Drive safe, I love you." The day of David's funeral was cold and gray, the November sky heavy with clouds threatening snow. Marcus stood at the graveside, surrounded by family and friends, and delivered a eulogy about his brother's generosity, brilliance, and love for helping others. He spoke of David's work as a surgeon, saving lives and healing patients, and of his final gift, not just the car but the love it represented. After the service, the reception, the condolences and hugs, Marcus walked alone to the parking lot. The black Mercedes waited, patient and gleaming, even under the gray sky. He got inside, started the engine, and slowly drove out of the cemetery. As he passed through Columbus, past familiar streets and landmarks, Marcus thought about the events in that parking garage. The Gustafsons had seen him and assumed a criminal. They had looked at his hoodie, his skin color, his proximity to a luxury car, and made up a crime. What they could not see, what their bias blinded them to, was the story unfolding right in front of them, a story of love, loss, and a brother's final act of generosity in the face of death. They could not see the message on his phone, the simple words that carried everything, "I love you." They couldn't see the weight of grief he carried, the exhaustion of 3 weeks spent watching someone he loved slowly die. They couldn't see his humanity because they had already decided he didn't deserve it before they even approached him. But the video captured everything. It showed the world exactly what they had done, exposing their cruelty and bias in undeniable detail. While it couldn't bring David back and it couldn't erase the pain of that day, it at least ensured their actions had consequences. Marcus pulled into his driveway as snow began to fall, light flakes drifting from the gray sky. He sat for a moment, engine idling, watching the snow settle on the windshield. The Mercedes would never just be a car to him. It was David's gift, a tangible expression of his brother's love, a reminder that even in death, the people we love continue to shape our lives. He turned off the engine, grabbed his keys, and walked to the front door. Behind him, the Mercedes waited in the driveway, black and beautiful, purchased with a surgeon's salary and given with a dying man's love. It was just a car, and yet it was so much more. The story of Marcus Bell and the Gustafsons became part of a broader conversation about racial profiling, about assumptions made from appearances, about the human cost of prejudice. It was shared in diversity training, online communities, and articles about everyday racism. But more than that, it became a reminder. Everyone we meet carries a story we cannot see, feels pain we cannot know, and deserves dignity we should give freely. The Gustafsons saw a black man near a luxury car and invented a crime. What they couldn't see was the story of love, loss, and heartbreak happening right in front of them. They couldn't see that the car thief was a music teacher spreading joy to children, They couldn't see that the Mercedes was a dying man's final gift to his beloved brother. They couldn't see any of it because their prejudice had already written the story for them. If you believe we have a duty to see humanity in others before jumping to suspicion, if you think Marcus deserved to grieve in peace without defending his right to exist in a hospital parking garage, hit that subscribe button. Let's demand a world where people are treated with basic dignity, where grief is respected, and where a man can access his own car without being accused of theft because of his skin color. What happened to Marcus wasn't just wrong, it was an assault on human decency at the worst possible moment. It is on all of us to make sure it never happens again.